All right, welcome to the Robert Show. I'm here at the GraphSummit by Neo4j. Super excited to be with Dan McGrath, also known as Dan McGrath, I think so.
Yeah,
Sudhir says so.
Yes, Dan McGrath. THPH, whichever way you want to spell it. Works with me.
It's so good to have you. Obviously, I know you look after the product. You're the VP of product at Neo4j. Super excited to be chatting. I saw your amazing presentation there. Great roadmap and great innovations that you all come up with. So super excited to chat about various things. But just for our audience, would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us more about what you do at Neo4j. What have you been working on?
Yeah, thanks very much. So I lead product management for the cloud side of Neo4j. So
Right.
if you think about Neo4j Aura and what we're doing in that space, that's my teams are working on that and making some really good progress in that space for customers.
Thank you. And I also saw your, the presentation. Would you like to share a little about, the roadmap? Just, I know there's no show and tell you, but then just a little bit that could excite our audience and what can they expect from Neo4j?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the main areas of investment, I think that are really excited. So obviously cloud first. Everyone's talking about it. It's where 80 to 90% of our customers are deploying new instances today, whether it's our managed Aura or whether they're deploying it themselves within AWS, GCP, Azure.
Right.
What we're working on is not just the managed service, but the improvements that we learn as part of running from that and talking to customers to make the core product more performant and more deeply integrated into the cloud ecosystems.
It's very important. Yeah, 100%. And are you also, I know you work with a lot of enterprise leaders out there. You've been talking to a lot of customers. How are they looking at GraphRag? What's their initial thoughts about it? And I know there was a panel discussion. There are even bigger enterprises using it. So kind of curious to learn a little from you.
Yeah, it's somewhere, I think today, like as you saw, so many conversations happen around this space.
Right.
I think there's a lot of organizations who are now trying to work out, how do I start approaching this myself? And I think that's where we get into the knowledge graph builder, right? Because
Exactly.
the hardest part is, where do I get started? And a lot of people, if they haven't got a knowledge graph to start with, like, how do I start building that? What do I need to think about? What is it going to look like? And what are the considerations, as we saw in some of the panel discussions, once you start refining it and improving that, so you have a better knowledge graph to back the graph part of GraphRag. And that, I think, is really critical, is letting people start to learn and explore and understand how they can build it within their organization and within their particular domain, and how they should be building and refining it.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to step back a little bit and also want to, know a little about why did you create it? What is the reason behind it? I know there's sometimes it's like the customer community, but what was the reason behind creating it?
Yeah, I think that was exactly it, right? We're talking to people about it, and there's a lot of research out there now that shows the dramatic improvements you can get from this GraphRag approach, where you combine graph and vector and the LLM model itself. And the question from customers, well, that's great, but I don't have a knowledge graph yet.
Yeah.
And so we felt that was somewhere where we know how to do that, and we started experimenting in that space. And it's like, we can start providing open source tooling that makes it easier for you to get started.
Yes.
And so it really did come from that place of people understanding what the value was, but wanting help getting started.
That's awesome. Do you also want to share a little bit about the benefits of, Knowledge Builder? How can people leverage it how can the community learn more and more from it?
Yeah, I think one of the things I like about it is open source. You can go read the code yourself and play with it. You can download it. It doesn't cost anything. We have free Aura tier as well, so you can actually spin up an Aura database. You don't need to worry about installing, configuring it if you haven't used the database before. You can go to the Knowledge Graph Builder and you can just start playing with it today.
Right.
I think that's what's really good about it. You can pull in YouTube articles, PDF articles. You can play with different models and see how they behave with it. So all free to get started. You can go play with it on the website. And I think it's really fun to just pull in like domains that you know about, pull it in and see what graph that it pulls out, and then use the chatbot. And we have a starter kit for building your own chatbot.
Nice.
So you can start like really starting to explore the different avenues and then play with your own data set, which I think makes it
it makes more real. Yeah, I think so. And thanks for sharing that. And also kind of curious to know, who's it made for? Like, who are the ideal personalities should be using it?
Yeah, it's similar to what we were talking about in the roadmap session, right?
Right.
Like, obviously, the core of the people we work with are developers.
Right.
They're going to be really important in this space. But also, we're seeing a lot more data analysts and data scientists coming into this space. And I think that's where, as well, making something that's easier to get started with, more accessible to people, so you have a broader range of skill sets who can start playing it.
Right.
And then by having these broader sets of skill sets who are playing with it, they can start making connections between different areas of domain expertise. And I think that's when you come out with the really good ideas that things build upon, when you can start crossing over domains and allowing everyone to access the technology.
Yeah, I love it. And can you also tell us a little about how has it improved since the release, where they can try it and find it? How are things moving?
Yeah, that's a good question. So obviously there's several different models you can use with it now, whether you're using OpenAI systems, there's Llama 3, Diffbot, there's a few other ones in there now. But I would say it's not just the graph builder itself, right? We've been, as we mentioned today, really setting a pace of innovation in the Gen AI space.
Yes.
From ecosystem integrations, whether you're using LangChain or Haystack and all these other tooling that you want to use around and build the experience upon, but also the core database itself.
Yep.
So we've been improving vector support, and we're working on performance improvements today. And we know in GraphRag, it's not just graph by itself, it's not just LLM by itself, there's these hybrid queries you run depending on your needs.
Right.
And so we're not looking at it just from the knowledge graph builder, but everything around it and all the tooling to give you that cohesive experience.
Awesome. And is it like a paid one, or people can actually use it? It's
totally free.
Since open source.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Love it. One more question, Dan, around the future. How do you see it evolving in the near future? I know things kind of evolve very quickly in the space we are, and we've seen obviously the graphs evolving so much, right? So kind of curious to learn a little about how do you see it in the near future? What can we expect?
Yeah, these events are absolutely amazing for this, because I think what really matters is what customers are building with it,
Right,
where they're going,
right.
what their use case. You heard some really exciting examples here today of how customers are using it. And I've had a lot of conversations with people after, I think the one I'm going to after this, once again, large graph support. People who have 100 terabyte plus data.
Wow.
We had that example today where they're looking to 5x the amount of data that they have within it. And so I think that's going to be a continued theme. How do we provide that scale and efficiency for these larger systems?
Right.
And the flexibility that goes around with it. I think the other thing that's really ties into all of this, it's the ease of use. Right? I think that's something that just makes things magical, when it's easy to use, when it's fast to get started, and when you can verify and prove that a particular use case provides value to an organization in as short a time frame as possible. You don't want to be doing proof of concepts for 3 months, 4 months. Like, you want to be able to do it within 5 days.
Exactly.
And show the value for it. And so we're doing a lot of work around this space to make graph more accessible to people and make it fit into the environments they're running, whether we integrate into the different platforms they're using, or the frameworks, etc. Like, there's a lot of focus on that.
That's awesome. Simpler the better, faster the better.
Yes,
it's always
absolutely.
that way, right? So, fantastic insights. One last question for you, Dan, and I'm pretty sure the audience would love to know about that, is where can they find you? Where can they learn more about the content that you guys put up? Where can they look at the roadmap? I know it could be the blogs, it could be the website, but is also, if people want to reach out to you, is LinkedIn a good place?
Yeah, you reach out onto me on LinkedIn. I love talking to customers. I love hearing about what they're using, as well as like where we can do better as well.
Yeah.
I think that's really what we want to work out, is when we're building what's next, are we actually building what you need and solving the problems that you have? So reach out to me on LinkedIn, as well as our YouTube channel. I think there's some phenomenal content that goes out on there.
Yeah.
I think there's some really good deep dive as well as introductory content to get you started.
Awesome. So that's where you can reach out to Dan. But Dan, once again, thanks for visiting the Rabbit Show. It is such a pleasure to host you. Thanks for sharing all the great insights.
Yeah, thank you. It's nice to meet up with you again.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today.
Bye.
Bye.